We've gathered again. Oh, we are so happy about this. Darren Millard, along with the co-founders of In Goal Magazine, Kevin Woodley and David Hutchison, and we have a lineup for you today as we bring you In Goal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, source for sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com. We will head over there for the gear segment with Cam, talking about the CCM EFlex 6.5. That's the junior line, the kids line. We're going to explain it all, but it's for the little ones. Not the little ones, but the little ones. Again, we'll walk you through that. I'm going to make that so confusing that we're going to have to explain it from the very start. We've also got...
Hold on.
Perfectly put.
Are these for Hutch?
I actually could wear
blocker.
Zing.
Just the blocker.
I legit could.
It is hard, though, when you're talking about junior lines. I think junior hockey, but so it's weird how you have to translate that stuff, and it's no fault of anybody's. It's just society's look at it, and then our look at it, and then you put in the hierarchy of the game. We've got the Stop It Goaltending You, the At Parent segment, dealing with the stress of your child playing goal and how that can affect you and how you can work around that. The Visual Edge Ion Pro Rates. That's our new segment that we launched last week. Joseph Wool is going to walk us through the pro reads and our feature interview presented by NHL Sense Arena. We are going to chat with Cesare Maniago, Kevin Woodley. I'm so envious that you got to have this conversation with Cesar. It's a tour of the history of goaltending, like a walking tour of goaltending.
Yeah, from a guy that, we're little over 10 days removed from November 1st and celebrating International Goalie Day and Jacques Plante putting on a mask for the first time. Well, guess who was there as his backup in Montreal? Cesare Maniago. Had an incredible career after that. And before that, played with Johnny Bower in Toronto. Still holds or is at the top of most goaltending records in the Minnesota North Stars / Dallas Stars franchise. Had a 9-year run there, was exceptional. And from literally strapping catalogs, the old what are those department store catalogs? We don't even have department stores anymore. Eaton's. Most people don't even know what Eaton's is.
Strap a webpage to your leg and protect yourself.
and I wouldn't suggest doing it with your laptop, but that's how he started playing goal, literally with tape and old catalogs. And from there to the National Hockey League, playing with some of the greats of the game and having some Gump Worsley, one of the first goalie coaches in the NHL, Cesare Maniago. We get into all of that in this week's feature interview presented by NHL Sense Arena. It's a good one. It's a little bit more historical, but there are some fascinating lessons on old stereotypes about size. And guess what? As a big goalie, it was harder for him. So it was a really great conversation, and I think everybody's going to enjoy this one.
Chat about the first time that he walked on the ice with a mask is mind-blowing. Won't give it away too much right now, but he went out there with a mask and he didn't finish with a mask. So
really telling what these guys went through.
Incredible. We're at the point now, teams moving past that 15-game mark. Are we able to look at goaltending numbers in the National Hockey League and go, okay, this is starting to become real?
I personally don't think so. But I mean, we got to look at something, so I understand. As a matter of fact, I had this conversation really quickly with Stuart Skinner of the Edmonton Oilers this week. And the audio quality is not great because it's just me with a phone in a locker room and a lot of background noise. But let's hear what Stuart Skinner has to say.
It's hard to not look at it, I find. Especially I'm at a point in my career where I'm old enough that I can kind of look at the board and see probably how games are at, where my numbers probably could be. Right. But in saying that, so sometimes, especially the way things have been to the start, you always want to look at them to see maybe how bad or how good they are and all that. So it is a challenging part. I don't really have like a 20-game check or 50-game check.
There was an article with a former NHL, I can't remember who it was, that said numbers mean nothing for goalies until we're at least 20 games.
Yeah. And honestly, I would probably agree with that. Yeah, I think kind of you could probably look at it in Christmas time and be like, okay, where am I at? I always look at it after a season just to see kind of how things went. But yeah, I don't really have like a set mark. Sometimes I just look at it, sometimes I don't. But yeah, really trying to not look at it.
Well, that's interesting that he tries to, there's a conscious effort to not look at it.
Well, let's be honest. As we talked about before in the parent segments, it's not like it helps you to look at those stats. If anything, it's going to hurt you because you've got it in the back of your mind, playing to some standard everybody else has. It's chasing results over process.
Yeah, but at some point you want feedback from statistics.
Do you?
Well,
I like Woody. I like Woody's clear sight statistics far better, and as he's proven, it makes a difference in selecting a goaltender to look at the real numbers, not the. Don't get me back into my parent segment rants about stats. Boys.
I was just going to say, didn't we cover this on the parent segment
over
the uselessness of statistics? I just find it, it's fascinating, and maybe for others to hear as they struggle to not pay attention to him, that here we have Stuart Skinner, a guy who was in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final last year, admitting how hard it is not to look at numbers early in a season. Now, Stuart's basically, his numbers are washed from 2 tough games. And, for certain, one of them, the Columbus game, nobody showed up in front of him. It was just odd man rushes and backdoor tap-ins, and his numbers took a beating. I thought it was really interesting that after we had this conversation in the morning, they played the Canucks at night, thumped them pretty good, 7-2 late. One of his teammates takes a kind of lazy, frankly, I didn't love the call, penalty. And Vancouver pumps their third goal into the net on a late power play on a backdoor one-timer. And Stewart had actually made a save earlier on a similar backdoor one-timer. And you could see the frustration. And I can't help but think that part of it was him doing the math in his head and realizing that 3 on 25 wasn't going to help those numbers, but 2 on 25 would have, or whatever it was. I can't remember off the top of my head whether it was 25 or not. But, just to give you the example, so if that's where the mind is going, because we're paying attention to the numbers, then for sure, it's not necessarily in the right place as the game is going on all the time, right? Like we're admitting there that it's maybe that focus is not necessarily on the process. But again, it's really, really hard, except for maybe me and my beer league skates where it doesn't really matter at all. But even then you're like, oh man, I've lost the first to 5 twice in a row. I can't, what
I'm hearing
man.
from that
it's hard.
Even a good start can get into your head in the sense of you've got these sparkling numbers and then you have one of those nights and then you're in your own head going, oh, there go my numbers.
See, and I think that's why I wait till 20 games. And I think it was your old media partner in Vegas, Mike McKenna, that told me that and made a really good case for it back in the day and explained
20
why.
games.
The numbers are just
for a goaltender played
for the goalie.
Some guys don't get there.
Like Juicy Saros. Well, that's true. It's fair.
It's true.
And that's totally accurate. But the reality is your numbers are a little more baked in, right? Like even Kevin Lankinen here in Vancouver, who's basically helped not save their season because they're a good team, but has been a massive part of them not having a very low start.
Yeah.
He went in very much so. Perfect word. He went into that Edmonton game with a 923, right? Near the top of the league. He hadn't had a tough night yet, one tough night, and he did that night. And so all of a sudden he's down around 905 and his numbers are closer to league average, although these days 905 is still well above league average. But you know what I mean? He's not on the top 10 page. Has his start been any worse? Kevin Lankinen's been exceptional for them. But that was his first regulation loss. But the numbers now all of a sudden don't look nearly as good.
So don't look at the numbers. Maybe something like how many good games versus not good games you've had. Have you had
quality starts?
Yeah, thank you. That's much better. Just interestingly, talking about the numbers being baked in, if you just, Woody, ask you a question.
Is there going to be math?
No, there's not. Are you happy with, what's the difference between a 900 and a 910 in terms of your perception of a goaltender?
Well, I mean, it's starting to change as the league average save percentage dips below 900, but for the longest time, that was the difference between maybe this guy's an American leaguer and maybe this guy sticks in the NHL on a long-term contract.
Well, I'm not actually trying to pull out what the difference is. I'm just trying to make the point, a 900 versus a 910 is a pretty big difference in terms of our feelings about a goaltender. Well,
it's 1 goal on 100 shots.
Or if you've played 10 games and then you pitch a shutout, you can go from a 900 to a 909 at about an average of 30 shots a game. One good game makes you the difference between an AHL and an NHL goaltender? No, of course not.
And I think the bigger picture is it's not the shutouts, especially early in this season, because we have seen some crooked numbers all around the league. It's avoiding the crooked number. It's avoiding the big one. And this kind of goes to when defenses are looser and teams are trying to figure out systems and everybody's trying to figure out where they should be in front of you. So this kind of goes to what a lot of goalie coaches have told me over the last 5 years. And I remember talking to guys like Roberto Luongo, who are in the Hall of Fame, and that whole generation of guys that would play 70 games. And they used to talk to me about how to manage your B games. And this is a lot where technique came into the league, right? Where what do you do? What is your foundation? So when you don't feel it, when all the sort of feel and rhythm and timing elements don't feel great, do you have a foundation that lets you get hit by pucks? And that was for, like, seriously, for an entire generation of goaltenders, like, having that base was key. So do I put myself in a good position technically to get hit? When I don't have my A game, how do I survive? And a lot of these guys did and played 70 plus. You cannot, the more goalie coaches I talk to now, you cannot get away with a B game anymore. A B game in today's NHL, unless your team is playing like the 95 Devils and shutting everything down, and it's harder and harder to do that, a B game is when you end up with a crooked number and everything goes sideways. That's when they hang.
I initially asked the question just because I was curious. I wasn't actually looking at it from the eyes of the goaltender. I want to know, when can I start taking the numbers that I'm looking at and processing them at face value, where there's enough of a I don't know, body of work there that this is what it is.
This is who the guy is this year. So basically, we talk a lot about the ties between Christmas and goaltending and all of the presents we used to get under the tree as kids that inspired us to become goaltenders. This is yours for the year, Darren. You're allowed to look at the numbers on Christmas Day. I'm sorry about the first 2 months. It's not that far, but it's probably into December before anybody hits 20 starts. Right? Like even the workhorses. UC Staros, we're November 12th. He's played more than anyone else. He's at 13.
Hellebuyck's played 12. Bobrovsky's played 11. Kochechkov has played 9.
We know UC Saros is good. We know Connor Hellebuck's otherworldly, right? Like we know that those eyes are good. I think where the conversation starts is like, hey, the guys that have had a couple crooked games, whose numbers are underwater, when can you sort of look at it and say, is this guy going to pull out?
Yeah, Swayman's at 11 and he's under 500.
Under 500?
That gets people's attention.
Oh, wins and losses, I hope you mean.
Yeah.
We were just talking save percentages. Poor Swayman.
Well, no. Swayman's at 313, 896, and he's 4-5-2.
Don't quote goals against average, Darren. We'll kick you off this podcast.
Well, don't think save percentage is much better. How much of a swing in save percentage, I guess, says that you're well established if you want to talk about number of games? Like I just mentioned that after 10 games, one start, you can swing it by 10 points. Well, 20 games, one shutout can swing it by 5 points. Is that more stable? What do you call stable? What do you call a body of work you can look at?
Well, I don't want to wait till Christmas before I start taking things in and absorbing them.
Wow. I'm telling, but think, I mean, yeah, hey, Woody, you were one of those kids that are always looking to see what was hidden in the around
at the risk of taking it down the rabbit hole. Woody, has anybody got numbers for consistency?
I mean, I think quality starts is one of them, right?
But within to me, being the math geek, I want to do standard deviation on all of guys' scores and find out if that's a number for
quality starts, bad starts. But like there's like when I look at ClearSight, they have a multiple categories, including like you can get a win and a bad start, and that's when the team bails you out, right? Like and it's all again, you can't do any of these numbers without some of the adjusted metrics on shot quality, because a quality start when your team gives up 20 shots and none of them are grade A's versus a quality start when your team gives up 20 shots and 7 of them are grade A's are two totally different numbers. So at the end of the day, we come back to the same thing. We need context.
There is a quality start metric without using the ClearSight numbers, and it's a little suspect as well. It relates to league average save percentage and how your save percentage in that game was and so on. I should look up the actual definition, but yeah, I just harken back to you saying something to me before, Woody, about somebody getting really excited about Goaltender X having 4 shutouts in their first 20 starts, and then all of a sudden, but wait, their goals against average is the same as everybody else in the league. That means they must have had 4 or 5 not great starts. So how do we judge a goaltender's consistency?
Well, and that's Mitch Courtney used to say that when it was Vezina time, right? The guys with like 9, 10 shutouts is like, okay, but if he's got the rest of his numbers are the same as my guy, that means he's had 9 or 10 sort of blow up games, right? So it's fascinating. You talk about quality starts. What are you effectively doing in a quality start measurement? You're grading a goalie on a single game, which we talked about during that parent segment.
I'll give you this example.
There you go.
Logan Thompson. He's 7-0 to start. It just jumps out at you. But Logan Thompson, when it comes to the other numbers, isn't putting up a 7-0 type season.
He's got a 9-10 in this day and age. That's a hell of a start, 255. So yeah, but I hear what you're saying. At the end of the day, we probably need more information on a lot of these guys before we start making. Hey, not that we at Ingle are making judgments.
He's 902. He's 8-1. Like you,
yeah. It's you're asking
Logan Thompson 7-0, but hasn't Ovi gotten off to a ridiculous start this year as well? He's a goal a game or something.
He's on a heater right now.
Yeah, the Caps certainly were not on a heater last year, and so there's got to be context. And with all respect to Logan Thompson, I haven't watched him play this year. I'm just putting it in the context of the team has to play well too.
So here, I'll give you. So just because we've got to move on, I'll give you as an example. Logan Thompson's 9-10. His actual defensive environment hasn't been that great. He's got an expected save percentage of 879. His adjusted save percentage, so his performance relative to shot quality, is actually 14th in the NHL right now. So
good for him.
He's had a really good start with the Washington Capitals, and yet being 7-0, I'm not looking game by game right now, but even if there's one, you can still have a 9-10 with one game that's average, but if your team scores a bunch and you still win, that's how you get to 7-0, right? He's been really good, so let's not take away from that. But the reality is it's really, I guess what we're saying, and we've spent 10 minutes dancing around it, is it's really early, and it's really hard anyways to compare guys, and even more so when the sample is so tiny. We're talking about making judgments on guys' season in samples that we would never make a judgment on the guys as a goalie overall.
I've never seen Connor Hellebuyck play better. And I don't care how many games he's played, it's 12, but he's been unbelievable. And Winnipeg's off this rocket start, but Hellebuyck has been sensational.
He's been really...
That's the eye test. I've watched more of their games, and it's just...
He's been really, really good. He also has... we're gonna do counting. I'm waiting for something to load here. 1, 2, 3.
I love how there's always a follow-up statistically with Woody.
He's got a 905 expected. What did we just say? Logan's was 879. So Hellebuyck has been incredible, no question. And yet he's playing behind right now the 5th easiest defensive environment in the NHL for any goalie.
26 points in expected. That's huge.
Then that's what you get in small samples. But and again, Hellebuyck is outperforming that environment by at a top 10 level, like another Vezina trophy. Absolutely. Please do not listen to what I just say and think that's a criticism in any way, because I'm with Darren. He is dialed to start this season.
There's always a but.
I'm a contrarian.
There's no but.
I'm a contrarian.
And it's not a but.
I just wanted to be able to go on the radio or TV and be able to say, this guy's having a great year. This guy's
You can.
overrated,
You have my my permission.
Oh, I do?
Yeah, you can say that Connor Hellebuyck is having a great year.
Oh, he can say, yeah, but nobody else.
There's a few. Send me notes. I'll tell you who you can say it and not.
Okay. Let's get over to the Hockey Shop by Cam and Company, talking about the CCM EFlex 6.5 line as things continue. You guys recorded this the other day, and you made a reference. There is construction happening.
Well, that when you're this is like goaltending in general. When you're the best, you don't rest on your laurels. Whether it's Marc-Andre Fleury, Roberto Luongo, the greats of the game, Martin Brodeur, Patrick, they always evolved. The Hockey Shop's the same way. 34,000 square feet of space. as they continue to grow and pack the place with hockey players. We'll forgive them for letting the skaters into the building. But the goalie corner, they've always looking to upgrade and make better use of that space. So there is going to be a little construction noise in the background of our gear segments on a week in, week out basis here for the next little while. But that's the commitment they have to you, whether it's the staffing in the goalie department and making sure that everybody in there plays the position and is passionate about the position, whether they're older, younger, they bring that same knowledge base, or making sure they have the latest and greatest. We talked about the Brian's new optic floor line last week and all the options they have in stock or discounts on past stuff as they move on to new generations. The older generations are discounted. There is no better place to do your shopping than the Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com. Obviously, Black Friday coming up here in November. Time to get your gifts for Christmas. They've got a Christmas wish list for goaltenders published on their website at thehockeyshop.com. So make sure you check it out. Get ahead on your shopping through the Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com.
Before we get into this, run me through the levels of this CCM goaltending line.
Oh, well, in general, I think the thing that has confused us a little that is not specific to CCM is the terminology of the different levels.
Okay.
Right? So youth is your smallest goaltender. I would suggest in an upcoming segment that we've actually now added one below youth, which is the tria goalie line. And Bauer has a segment coming up with the Hockey Shop shortly. But youth generally is that first set of pads that you have. And after that, you get into junior gear. So you're out of your first set, maybe you're 7, 8 years old, something like that. And the junior lines, depending on your size as a goaltender, go until you hit intermediate. And then after intermediate, you're into your senior lines. And there's specific sizes, whether you're, a 27, a 30, 32 that are available in each of those. And I don't want to get into the weeds too much because they'll differ a little bit between different companies. The widths of those pads change, obviously getting a little wider as you get up until you hit pro, which are all 11 inches wide. So those change maybe a little bit between manufacturers, but the nomenclature, youth, junior, intermediate, senior, and we just feel a little confused when we hear that junior because It doesn't mean you're playing junior hockey. A little bit like some of those companies, as Woody has pulled out before, use the term pro for their second line of gear, which is a little bit confusing as well. So I probably just made it even muddier, didn't I?
No, all you got to remember is youth, intermediate. No, youth. Youth, junior, intermediate, and senior. That's the order, folks.
Did you do that on purpose?
I wish I could say I did that on purpose, Darren. I'm not.
I'm going to be talking about concussion baseline testing later, Woody. This may apply.
I'm not a smart man.
This week's gear segment over at the Hockey Shop, source for sports language, thehockeyshop.com, is focusing on the junior.
Correct.
But I believe the 6.5 line also includes intermediate, or am I wrong?
I think it does.
I think we need Cam to explain it all.
All right, let's go over there now.
Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, source for sports, where our look at kids' lines continues with CCM, one of two offerings from CCM. A quick note of apology in advance. There is construction going around us because they're always looking to get better here at the Hockey Shop, source for sports, as is CCM with their youth lines.
Junior.
So, junior. See, I never know what to call it. Junior, youth. I just say kids. This is for the kids. Cam will correct me. We have got the EFlex 6.5. There is a second line in the XF Axis line.
F5, which I'm sold out of.
Not XF. Axis. Sold out of that right now. We'll get to it when he gets more in stock. Probably a good sign that it's sold out. Today we're going
6.5.
EFlex.
Nice little refresher off this. Yes, we have previously talked about this in the past, but it's been a while, so might as well go over it here. So EFlex 6.5 leg pad, stuff that we have seen a little bit here before with a few new bells and whistles. One of them being that integrated knee that was brought on by the EFlex 6. This is something that you're seeing now, giving the pad more stability, especially in the knee cradle. Big upgrade off of the previous models. Moving further into the back, we can see that leg channel. Very, very similar to some of the years past. That rotation control system strap. Wrapping around. QMSS2.
Still a bootstrap on there?
Still a bootstrap. So, reason being that it's carried over and stayed on the junior lines is just, again, that little bit more control on those shorter legs, keeping that pad up on that boot of the skate itself. We don't want to be like torquing this down super, super tight. But again, depending on how the fitment of the kid that we have in the pad itself can really help to create a little bit more stability.
I was just going to say, we talk a lot about not getting pads that are too big. We know parents want to allow a little room for growth.
Correct.
But it can be really tough if the pad is too big and doesn't fit on the leg. It'll affect their skating. It'll affect their balance in the butterfly. It'll affect their ability to enjoy the game. However, as testers up to pro level equipment, sometimes we'll get a pad that's a little too big. And if it has the bootstrap, you can just tighten it a little bit and pull that pad down and help you get a better fit until they grow into it. So having a bootstrap on the pad can benefit you in that way if you're looking at a sizing. Of course, I would recommend talking to the guys here at the Hockey Shop Source for Sports to make sure you get the right size for your kids. Okay, so that's the
right.
pad.
Yes.
Any other features we need to go over?
Single break, kind of already shown that off a little bit.
Sizes.
Yes.
Let's go with sizes because, again, I get confused about the different, like, youth, junior, intermediate. What are these for?
26, 28, and 30.
Standard +1?
That's correct.
There we go. Okay, so that's the range we're looking at. That goes into intermediate? Or is that...
So that's crossover size. So yes, intermediate also has a 30-inch, but there's a junior 30-inch as well. So again, that really depends on the goalie, their size. Are they ready for an intermediate pad? It's just giving us...
Okay, so hold on. So let's just go over this right now to educate parents. A junior 30-inch and an intermediate 30-inch, what's going to be the difference? Price point too?
Price point too.
So more expensive in the intermediate?
Well, it's a different pad. So you're looking at would be the 6.9 and a 30 +1 in an intermediate. That pad will be more rigid. It's a little bit wider. It's a bit heavier too as well. So that also depends, like I said, on the goalie themselves. Are they ready for that pad? Are they still transitioning? Have they hit a growth spurt, but they haven't quite filled out from that growth spurt? These are those things that all kind of come into play when fitting.
And these are the reasons you come to the Hockey Shop Source for Sports to talk to Cam and his entire crew in the goalie department. They all know the answers to these. They'll all be able to ask you the questions to get you the answers to get your kids in the right gear. Okay, shifting gears.
Nice.
Love. Hey, it was a segue, eh? I like that.
So,
this is a Source for Sports exclusive in your hands.
In my hands, you have a regular one.
There's a standard one. You can see the difference in the pocket and the
That's correct.
lacing.
So, when you see these 6.5 gloves on the wall, the ones that are marked with SDC, will be our Source exclusive model. Double T, extra 1-inch skate lace. So deeper pocket, skate lace pocket really will help.
You can see the difference in that.
That's correct.
Depth of, wow. Yeah, okay.
Definitely back to their 581 style glove. So it will be similar-ish to a 580 style of a closure. Kevin was able to get his hand fully kind of in there.
This is a 580.
This is a 581. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I didn't.
Yes.
When you said Source, I thought just that one.
No. Both are.
Gotta explique.
Yes, exactly. And again, that upgrade being the skate lace and just the +1 into the T. Blocker.
Is that Source for Sports? Oh, you gave me a left-handed blocker, you silly guy.
I know. Just to screw with you a little bit, just to see if you were paying attention. So, blockers themselves, very, very similar to the EFlex of the past. Nice open cuff, nice tight fitting palm, lightweight, thin blocker board, very well balanced, very rigid though too. It's not like you're really giving up a whole lot here. That's one thing that I do like. So it's going to maintain that blocker rebound like quality itself. Again, good balanced overall feel. Yes, there is a Source exclusive one, but really it's just coming down more so to colors. There's not really a spec upgrade on it.
Okay. Cameron, does this mean you have full right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
in the kids line.
It does, kind of obvious there if you have it on the other hand.
Well, I didn't know. Well, I never asked this question before. I mean, Andrei Vasilevsky, if you had this in Russia when he was a kid, he would do this. But because they didn't have it, he does it the other way. And this is good for kids.
I think he does just fine playing regular though. I hear he's pretty good.
You're kind of missing my point on this one, my friend.
I know what you're saying. Yes, it is available in full right, both the lines. So if you have any questions, give us a call here, 604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790 or check us out at thehockeyshop.com.
You finished strong. I'll give you that. We've got a whole nother line from CCM. Like he said, the Axis line is sold out right now, but there's more coming in, and we'll get you a full breakdown of that as we continue to work our way through, not youth, but kids
Junior.
Don't mess with me. Intermediate, junior. I is confused.
Thanks, Kevin.
See, clear as mud. But it's a great set of gear. And that you get into the transitional stage from one level to the other, and that's when you really need the help of Cam and company to get you past that stage of what's best for my child.
And listen to them. They know. I know that we talked about it in the segment. The temptation to go bigger so the kid has room to grow into it. If they can't move, they can't play, they can't skate, they're not going to have fun. I know it's tough, real easy for me to say from here, but that sort of temptation to go bigger so that it'll last longer, as much as I understand it financially, can have an impact on how they sort of function in the gear in the short term.
Love the bootstrap, though, of just buying you a little extra time at the start, and you can grow into that path.
Yeah, I know that's just really good point, Darren, because we've it's something I know I'm not sure a lot of people would even think about. The bootstraps largely disappeared from equipment, but yeah, we use it in goal because we'll have testers and we'll have test sets come in that are just a little bit big, and if it's got a bootstrap on it, you can just make sure that you're still landing on the knee. You can hold that pad down a little bit with the bootstrap, and for sure, I think in this case, when we talk about a little extra room to grow, having a bootstrap on this CCM model is a really good idea.
Hutch, you're going to decide. Are we going to do the Visual Edge Ion Pro Reads next, or do we want to get into our Stop It Goaltending You the App parent segment?
Oh, that's a whole lot of pressure. I think we're going to look at Visual Edge.
Okay, that's great.
Our good friends from Visual Edge have brought this new segment, so why hold back? Give it to the people. They want to know.
Focus on the pro reads.
Well, and I mean, a perfect week to focus on the pro reads. Our second week with Visual Edge is sponsoring our famous pro reads segment, our most popular segment over at ingoalmag.com. And we have a Visual Edge user as our pro reads feature guest this week. It's Joseph Woll of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who, amidst all the hype around Anthony Stolarz, and well-deserved, Aaron, you're allowed to say that he's having a good season. Joseph Woll's come back off the early season injury and put in a couple of great starts himself. So this is a product, Visual Edge, that is designed to basically help you train your eyes on all the key aspects as they relate to goaltending. Think of it as weight training for the eyes and the brain, a way to strengthen your visual and cognitive processing skills for peak performance, tracking, reaction speed, visual stamina, focus, and more. For me, it's divergence and convergence, especially convergence. I've been working in the program for the last week, noticed it. Didn't have my best game last night, but I felt like I was seeing the puck better last night as I start to dig into this. That's what it's all about. Tools specific to goaltending to help you sort of train your eyes and your brain. Joseph Woll is a user, one of over 50 in the National Hockey League and American Hockey League. And so perfect that he's our guest this week on Pro Reads, where he talks about post-bump keys and when to look off the puck. We talk about our eyes and the ability to process. Training them in a way to look off the puck is important. So I'll ask you guys, I don't want to give away what Joseph Woll tells us about when to look off the puck. When do you guys look off the puck?
Not sure I do.
I do when it's shot at me, evidently. That's when I don't see it, but
I should do it a lot more.
I'm working on that.
I don't do it nearly enough, man.
Hey, maybe
honestly,
maybe there's some homework for everybody, especially the beer leaguers out there, but maybe the young kids as well. When you're in practice this week or when you're in a game this week, just check yourself. How often and when are you looking off at the puck? And send us a note.
We've certainly heard it from scouts watching kids that they're evaluating, at the junior levels, and quite often they'll be like, "Ah, man, like puck focus, not looking off the puck." I see it in Vancouver. We talked about the Kevin Lankinen start to the year. Unreal. The difference between him and Artur Silovs, who's had a bit of struggles this year, who I still believe is going to be just fine, folks, even if, he has to spend a little time in the American League again after getting them to the second round of the playoffs last year. But the amount of times and how automatic it is for Kevin Lankinen to look off the puck and scan the zone when the puck is in a non-dangerous area the juxtaposition is quite telling. And so
it's harder to look off the puck now because guys will shoot from such sharp
From everywhere.
Well,
You're right.
And that's why you need to know where those soft areas are. And that's why Joseph Wall, again, we don't want to give it away. If you're an InGoal Premium member, go check it out. But Joseph Wall explains some of the key ones, and it helps him lead directly to a tough save.
Let's get over to it.
What you start to learn too as you get older is the moments you get that you're able to take looks, especially when if the puck's getting rimmed around, you know where it's going to be. That's a great time to take a look.
You're in a safe spot. It's
exactly. Like on dump ins, if the puck's getting dumped in, you know where it's going to end up. It's a great time to take a look. Anytime there's a player that doesn't have his eyes up looking at you, like it's a good time to be able to take a look. And the more of an image you can create of the zone, it just helps you to be a step ahead of the play.
That's a little tease of what you'll see
over at Pro Reads
and here
every week, folks. Hutch, I've sort of lost track. How many hundreds are there Pro Reads at ingoalmag.com?
I don't have the exact number, but I know it's just gone past 250.
It's gone a little over 7,222. That's how many.
Let's just
we go back to Cesare Maniago.
Little over 250, but let me just say, in the Pro Reads presented by Visual Edge, you do get more than one video. And for people who aren't familiar with them, you go into the Pro Read. Kevin presents you with a little scenario, often with an image to look at, just a moment in time. Then you get to see the save itself so that you can think, how would I have done this myself? Before you then see the entire Pro Read where the NHL goaltender unwinds and unpacks everything for you. So it's kind of a cool educational way of looking at things.
And I'll give you a little hint. Just because the NHL goalie does it one way doesn't mean it's the right way. And this is the honesty that these guys bring to our conversations that I love. And that's why we show you the snippet. Then we show you a video. We say, do you agree? Would you have done it this way? And Joseph Wall was one of them this week. When he looked at the video, he's like, I think I had enough time to beat this play a different way or come across a different way than I did. And that's the type of analysis. If we can watch the best in the world break down their game and look for ways to get better, just think of how the next time you're in a similar situation, because at the end of the day, there are only so many different plays. It's a puck cycled up the wall and then funneled across, like how you play that compared to him. And if you can find takeaways, even though you're not facing NHL shooters, that apply and will help you get better. It's what Pro Reads is all about. We're so happy to have Visual Edge as a sponsor of it. Make sure you check out in the Pro Reads, we've got discount codes for the public as well as private. The public discount code, Hutch?
InGoal. It's really simple. If you go over to Visual Edge and you want to order one of their programs, you get the opportunity to put in a discount code. You put in InGoal and you will save 15% off the listed price. If you'd like to save 30%, then you need to be an InGoal member. Go check out the Pro Reads, and the code for InGoal members, if you're logged into the site, will be presented for you so you can get your 30% off. You ask me, that makes a membership well worth it right there.
Visual Edge, the S in visual is a Z. VisualEdge.com.
Or is it a Z? Or a Z? Tomato.
I thought it was Z.
You've been
a Canadian living in the States. That's got to be tough for you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, though there's words that I've had to absolutely alter how I say them.
Well, especially as a Canadian who spends the summer in the Maritimes, there's a lot of boots.
Yeah. Process is the one that highlights the whole thing, and then we work down from there. Pro Reads. I would love to do a Pro Reads with John Davidson from back in the day and have JD walk me through it because he's such a wonderful, articulate announcer, hockey guy.
Welcome, Darren. That'd be awesome.
That'd be so cool. All right. Now we will get over to our Stop It Goaltending You, the app parent segment with Hutch dealing with the stress of a goaltender. Before we get to that, Stop It Goaltending You, the app continues to provide knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, there's new videos up every week. We've talked about it many times before. They try and segment it. So you don't have to, we talk about rabbit holes. You can go down a rabbit hole at Stop It Goaltending You, the app, and spend hours working on getting better. Or if you want to just digest it in small segments, they've got daily primers every day Most recently, the focus with Brian DeCord, the founder of Stop It Goaltending, former NHL goaltending coach, director of goaltending, son Joey in the National Hockey League right now. Brian walked through 5 different Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on leadership. How to be a leader as a goalie. Maybe they don't put the C on your mask like they did for Roberto Luongo, but you can still be a leader. Starts talking about examples and actions. Talks about choosing your words carefully and being positive. Having empathy for teammates. Some of these things Hutch has talked about in the parent segment. Having empathy, not always just blaming the goalie, but also, hey, like having empathy for the mistakes that happen in front of them rather than just blaming them. Having the habits that you want others to have. It's one thing to want your teammates to show that professionalism and good habits. You have to have them yourself. And then follow it up with, what you say you're going to do, make sure you do it. So those are the 5 daily quick 1-minute primers from Brian that you can find on the Stop It Goaltending U app. They also had a 5-minute video on wraparounds 2 weeks ago. This week, they've got a power pep with UC Saros and a playbook breaking down the similarities and differences. And again, kind of like Pro Reads, some of the things they do uniquely specific to how they play of Igor Shesterkin and Ilya Sorokin, 2 of the top young Russian goaltenders in the game. So there is something for everyone at Stop It Goaltending U, the app. And of course, we talk a lot about Pro Reads and all the things we do over at ingoalmag.com. When you get a subscription to Stop It Goaltending U, the app, you automatically get a subscription as well to the In Goal Magazine premium product. You become a premium member. You're able to unlock all those Pro Reads and hundreds of drills and tips that we've got from NHL goaltenders over the years. Make sure you check it out. Stop It Goaltending U, the app.
Everything is really connected. Hutch.
Today's segment might be because I was feeling a little disconnected, Darren. That's because my son plays junior hockey. He lives in a different city. I don't get to be at all of his games, and I'm feeling a little alone over here sometimes. And so I just wanted to tell all the other goalie parents out there, you're not alone. It could be a little bit lonely being a goalie parent because there aren't many of us anyway. Most of the hockey parents can sympathize with us. I've heard lots of them say they are thankful that their child isn't a goaltender. But they just don't get what it's like being a goalie parent. And sometimes it can be a bit challenging dealing with the emotions that we have to deal with. So I don't think I'm the only one feeling this way. I wanted to let all the other parents out there, especially the young goalie parents, to know that having that roller coaster of emotions that we all face is perfectly normal. InGoal's a fantastic community. We talk about it all the time, guys. We're always amazed by the notes and the conversations we get into as we come together as a community of goaltenders, goalies, coaches, and in this case, parents. For me, it's nice to know that there is that large community out there. It is a roller coaster emotionally. I've gone from seeing my kid have moments where he's literally living his childhood dreams to a week later having to deal with some heartbreaking pain after a tough game. And that all happens in a short span of time. And then that roller coaster heads back up again. It's challenging being a goalie parent. So what's my point? First off, just to let everybody know it's perfectly normal and it's okay if you're struggling with the emotion of being a goalie parent, especially if you're new to it. And I'm here to tell you you're not alone and to give you maybe a couple of tips for dealing with that roller coaster. First, don't put that stress on your kid. I don't think we should ever be saying, I'm so nervous every time you play. Let's save that for a friend, a spouse, whatever. It's okay. You need somebody to talk to, but let's not put that stress onto our child. They've got a difficult enough position to play already. I would say, and I'll mention it later though, it's probably a good thing to be honest with your kid that stress is a normal thing in life. Just maybe not you're stressed out when they play. Number 2, they always say to goalies, never get too high or too low. I would say that to goalie parents as well, just for your own sanity, but also to model for your children how we'd like them to be when they're goaltenders. So let's not get too excited when things are going great. Let's not get too low when things aren't going well. Let's model that for our kids. Some specific techniques. We mentioned it before on a podcast on a previous episode when we had Luciano Somerville in to talk with us. Double breathing or the physiological sigh. That's great for that momentary dealing with stress. That's where you take in a great deep breath. And then before breathing out, you just take in one more breath and then a long exhale. Do that 3 times. You will feel a momentary stress relief that really is scientifically proven to make a difference.
You know how many people are doing that right now? Like
I
practicing the double breathing, just as you say that.
Good. I hope so.
Good. Like practicing it, not because they're stressed. They're just practicing. Sorry.
Well, I also bet if people listen to this podcast that they're also doing number 4, a lot of people, and that's go out and get some exercise. If I get really stressed, whether it's hockey or something else, for me, there's nothing like some exercise. Hard ride, a run, a brisk walk. For me, it takes a good while, 30 minutes or so, before it really makes a difference to my stress. That reduces stress hormones, increases endorphins, which are those neurotransmitters that help us reduce stress, amongst many other good things. I know some people like to listen to music or perhaps this podcast while exercising, and I do it on occasion too. But if I'm dealing with stress, I think it's more important for me to just be with my thoughts, not to avoid them. So exercise helps in the short or intermediate term, but also having it a regular part of your routine, I think will help dealing with stress as a goalie parent. And then 5th, meditation. You can find a lot of meditation exercises online, from free resources like YouTube to apps like Headspace, Apple Fitness. I've tried them all. And again, they help both short and long term to sort of calm your mind. And we have these busy lives, guys, where so much screen time even. And if we're honest, it's not just the kids with too much screen time. It's hard to find time to quiet our minds. So 10, 15 minutes to learn the practice of meditation honestly can help with stress and is a good thing to try. And then lastly, find somebody to talk to. Someone who will listen, though, not someone who's just going to reinforce your feelings. I think that idea of 2 goalie parents sitting together and talking about how stressed they are, I'm not sure that's going to relieve the stress. You just want somebody who can listen and sympathize. Most importantly, though, this week, I just want everybody to know that you're not alone. It's okay to be feeling this way. And we want you to show your child that it's perfectly normal to be dealing with stress, just maybe not the stress of their particular games. I don't want my kid to think he's the cause of my stress. So I don't say every time you play, I get nervous. It's tough enough to do that as a goaltender, but I want to be a model to him. And obviously I can't now, but when he was in minor hockey, of being calm before games, not getting too high, not getting too low, as I said. And maybe just share that I have ways of dealing with stress when life, maybe through a tough day at work or something, gets me a little bit more stressful. So anyway, a few thoughts there dealing with a stressful position as a goaltender or as a goalie parent to let you know you're not alone. And as always, if you have anything you'd like to share with us, or even if you just need somebody to vent with, feel free to reach out to me, parents@ingoalmag.com.
And your stress is your stress. My stress is mine. And nobody's is more overwhelming than another. You're living what you're living.
I think that's a great point.
Can imagine, because I mentioned that because I'm trying to imagine what Cesare Maniago was going through back in the day. He is our NHL Sense Arena feature interview guest this week.
Or his parents.
I didn't watch Cesar play. I knew of him, but his stories it's a book through the evolution of so many parts of goaltending.
Yeah, and like we said, like tying it in, we mentioned Plante. I don't want to give too much of it away to, he talks multiple times about how, as Hutch said, it can be a lonely position as a parent back then, especially. I mean, it still can be as a goalie. It can be lonely. You're alone back there. You don't have anybody to help you. And in Cesare Maniago's case, like literally, there was no such thing as a goalie coach back then. Later in his career, he got a little help from a former pro.
He barely had a partner back in Cesar's day.
Well,
very true.
Like, speaking of that, like, wait till you guys hear the story about how many games he played over and how many bus rides and airplanes he took after his first call up to the Maple Leafs. So, you know what? This thing is loaded. It may not be like a lot of stuff about the modern goaltending, and technique and stuff like with our guests that are in the NHL right now, but there are a lot of correlations and lessons that come from it. But more than anything, there are just fantastic stories about what the previous generation went through to get us to where we are as goaltenders today. It's a valuable lesson. It's an entertaining listen. Let's get to Cesare Maniago. Really excited to welcome to the In Goal Radio podcast, Cesare Maniago, who played over 500 games, 568 games in the National Hockey League before retiring after the 1977-78 season. Mr. Maniago, how are you?
I'm fine, Kev, and yourself?
I'm good. I feel like the timing of our conversation is is perfect. We're 10 days removed from November 1st and the night that Jacques Plante wore a mask for the first time. Here at In Goal Magazine, we celebrate that as International Goaltending Day. I understand you may have been present for that.
Yes, I was in Montreal at that same time, and in fact, there was a bit of a problem, which I'll get to in a second. But when I arrived there, I was in Montreal as a backup for Plante, and he came over and asked if I wanted a mask to be made, and I said yes, absolutely. He says fine. He says I'll make an appointment up at the Montreal General Hospital, in which they're going to take a mold and then make the so-called, they called it the pretzel mask, in that it was brown and kind of stringy. So had that made up there. They delivered it within a few days. And I'll never forget the first practice that we had at the Forum. And, you know, the team comes out and they limber up, they skate around, and then you line up for shots. And anyways, at that time, I grabbed the mask, put it on my head, and getting ready for shooting practice. Toe Blake, who was the coach at the time, came over and he says, what's that you got? I said, well, it's a mask. He says, what do you intend to do with it? I says, well, I'm going to wear it in practice. And he just said, he says, if I were you, he says, I'd think twice about it. It was almost like saying, you take it off right now. And that was it. So I did take it off, and I didn't wear it until I got to New York. And so Plante, because he had been there for so long, he was definitely a little upset, but he wore his, and nothing was done to him as far as a penalty or a situation where everybody'd be upset.
Wow. And that mean by the time you get to New York, that's 1965. So, a pretty good gap there. What do you remember of the night he put one on for the first time?
Well, it was kind of iffy in that put it on, but there is a certain spot in the mask where if the puck was just literally below your head, there was a blocked out vision. So
Okay.
I started experimenting with it, and eventually the time that I made it permanent was when the Philadelphia Flyers Spectrum roof blew off. They were playing their home games in Quebec City, and unfortunately, what happened there is I'm playing without the mask and got hit in the face, broke my cheekbone, and from that day on, that was it. I says I'm wearing a mask for the rest of the time that I'm playing.
I got to be honest with you. There's probably a lot of people my age and younger listening. I'm 51 that just have trouble with even the concept of playing goal without a mask. But I'm guessing that's just the way it was as you grew up. Was there any other incidents earlier in your career where you took pucks off the face and had thought about doing this earlier, or did it take Jacques to kind of blaze the way a little bit for everyone else that it was okay?
Yeah, I know it was a combination of things. In that Bill Masterton, who they have a trophy after his name now.
Yeah.
What had happened was we were playing at home against Oakland, and he got hit, went back, hit his head on the ice, and he passed away during the night. And we at that time, I was wanting to wear a mask. And there was two players, Dave Malone and Bill Masterton. They had wanted to wear a helmet, and management and coach was deadly against it. And that's an unfortunate thing because he lost his life because of that. And the thing is, their reaction to it, especially the coach and GM, was they wanted us not to wear the helmet or the mask because we were losing our identity to the fans, which was, as far as I'm concerned, a big crock of crap. And it's a little upsetting. right now, even as I'm talking to you about it. But that was their main reasoning about it. And eventually, after Bill passed away, they didn't say anything with a couple of other players that we had on our team, started wearing helmets. And then that's when I started wearing the mask permanently.
Well, I don't mean to upset you. I'm sorry to spend so much time on the mask, but it is a fascinating part of the game and a fascinating part of the history of the game. And sorry you had to go through that. It's especially the identity thing. Now we see with all the designs on it, goalies may be the last ones left that can show their personality through the paint jobs.
Exactly. I mean, the position has just changed completely. I was just reminiscing the other night in that even as I was playing, there are times and emotions that would come into it, and I'd really be concerned that, if there's too much negative thinking behind it, then I'd maybe be forced to take it off. But no, I stayed with it and just continued to wear it. And luckily, I had shots to my head after, and this is wearing the mask. And I'm telling myself, if I hadn't had it on, how bad of an injury would I have had?
Yeah, it's like I said, for a lot of us, it's almost impossible to wrap our minds around it. To be perfectly honest with you, couldn't even imagine doing it. Some of the guys you had a fascinating career, a long career, a lot of success in Minnesota, especially, but the early years with Toronto, back in an era where there was only one goalie, and you spent a lot of time in the minor leagues, but also got a chance to work with Johnny Bower when you would go back and forth. Do I understand that correctly? You would actually go back and forth between Toronto and Sudbury in those early days?
Yeah, well, in fact, I don't know if it ever happened to another goalie at all, but the situation there was Johnny, I was playing in Spokane at the time, and I belonged to Toronto, and Johnny Bower was injured. So they called me, and I had to be the backup to Jerry McNamara, who was the second in line in the Montreal chain of goalies. In the first game he played, he got injured. So now I'm the only Toronto-sponsored goalie in their system. And I also was playing in Sudbury to fill in for Jerry McNamara. But now that he got hurt, I was the only one. And the schedule as it was between the NHL Toronto Maple Leafs and the Sudbury Wolves of the Eastern Pro League, I ended up playing in Toronto, then flying out the next day to Sudbury, play there that night, catch the midnight train from Sudbury back down to Toronto, and it went back and forth. In that, I played 7 games in 6.5 days between Sudbury and Toronto. And I think that's got to be a record.
I was going to say, and now here we are these days, the goalies, we keep hearing they can't even play 60 games in a season.
Things have changed, haven't they?
They have, for sure. I want to ask, some things don't change, though. What drew you to the position as a young player? What was it about goaltending that sort of drew you to it and that you love?
Well, it really happened right at home. I had 2 older brothers who always wanted to practice their shots, and I'm the youngest one. And it just happened that the porch that we had outside our house was literally goal dimensions. And so, because I was the youngest one, everybody in the neighborhood took shots at me. And really, I was just fascinated with the position. I remember making a pair of goalie pads out of Eaton's catalogs of potato sacks. And I just sew it up and just strap it around my leg. And that's what I wore for the longest time, from a kid of maybe 9, 10 years old.
You grew up in Trail, which has a very strong, for listeners outside of British Columbia, and our audience is international all over the world. There's a very strong hockey history there. Was that a part of your roots in the game and your experiences growing up?
Oh, definitely. Just idolized all the players that played for the Trail Smoke Eaters, which was the senior hockey club there. And I had favorite goalies that I would follow. Like one was a Duke Scotolero who wore a baseball hat all the time while they played goal. And
Wow.
I tried wearing that for a couple of games and it didn't work. So unfortunately, I never did wear a baseball hat while playing in the net. But in those days when you're young and it's just no different now, I'm sure. Young kids, they idolize players. They just know all their stats. And I was doing the same thing with goalies. And growing up, my favorites were Kirk Broda and Chuck Rayner of the New York Rangers. So with that in mind, I'd be sliding back and forth on the hardwood floor, watching the hockey game and pretending to be one of those goalies in the NHL.
So there you go. The more things change, the more they stay the same because the game and the position is so different now. But a lot of goalies, even today, share similar stories about being the younger brother and going in net and watching their idols on TV. As you watch them, did I said you're emulating them. Obviously, a different era. Now, kids got goalie coaches from the ages of 7 and 8, but were you just trying to teach yourself? Did you have help with that when you were younger? Or even as you became a pro, were guys like you played with so many greats? Did they help each other? Did you mentor each other? Talk about the technical aspects of the position even back then.
I'm glad you brought that up because as I was saying, I'd be watching a Turk Broda or Chuck Rayner. And what I started to do was drag the one leg. Like right now, all the goalies have the same system. They put both legs down. Well, I'm thinking the same thing, and I was always dragging my right leg as they do there. But I couldn't get my left leg to go down because I thought I'd split my groin in half. And that's the way I look at the goalies now. A lot of their injuries are groin injuries, having to do the splits the way they're doing it. And I tried to emulate them the same as they're doing now. But the only thing is I was just able to get my right leg down. And about the only time that I really asked for help, I was having problems. It would have been maybe the probably the third or fourth year in Minnesota. And that's when they convinced Gump Worsley to come out of retirement.
Right.
And as soon as Gump got to Minnesota, I went up to him. I says, Gump, I'm really having a problem, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing wrong. I says, and this was at practice. And I says, if you don't mind, just kind of have a look to see what I might be doing wrong and see if we could correct it. And within 5 minutes, he told me what I was doing wrong, adjusted to it, and it worked. So, I mean, I after that, I felt that it should have been compulsory that every team have a goaltending coach or someone that was familiar with that position.
And of course, they didn't back then. That would have been 1970, I believe, with the Minnesota North Stars, where they talked Worsley into coming out of retirement. That's a fascinating story. What other memories do you have of Gump at that stage in his career? One of the legends of the game. I'm guessing there's a few stories from that laugh.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was totally against flying. I mean, he would white knuckle it. And the guys started making fun of it while we were flying and coming in for a landing, whatever. And I can remember he threw a cup of coffee at Lou Nanny because he was teasing him about his white knuckling affairs. And I mean, there was a few laughs along the way, but we got along great. We were roommates on the road. He always liked sleeping with the these are the older hotels where you're able to raise a window in the bedroom. And I can remember this one time in Buffalo, as Gump, I says, it's freezing in here. And that was in the morning. And sure enough, he had raised the window about 6 inches, and we had a layer of a foot of snow on on the windowsill. And I said, Gump, you can't do it. And he says, oh, yeah. He says, it was too hot in here. I had to do it. Just bear with me, please. So I never did open my mouth again whenever he was raising up a window.
What was it like playing with? I mean, he still played too. You guys, I know in the early years that you excelled in Minnesota. They're having a little trouble finding someone to play with you that could sort of match the level you were playing at. They bring in Gump. At that stage of his career, like, was he able to play as often as he wanted, or were there mornings where he just wasn't feeling it?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. And this is kind of talking out of school, in that when he was there, depending on who we were playing, we'd have the morning meetings and he'd be told that he's going to play that night. Fine. He'd come in at close to game time and just basically says, I don't feel well and I don't think I'm ready to play. So I'd have to play. And then this went on for maybe about 2 or 3 weeks. And I pulled him aside. I says, Gump, I says, hey, listen, if they're telling you you're playing tonight and you know that you're not up to do it, let me know right now so I could prepare myself. And he says, okay. And that was the understanding we had. He basically was naming when he wanted to play. And I basically said, I'll go along with that as long as I know well ahead of time that I'm taking your spot. So that's the way it was until he retired.
Yeah, we talked about some of the other names you play. You mentioned the stint with the Rangers. Don Simmons, Ed Jockman, some of the different. Well, it was so hard to get a spot in the National Hockey League because there were only so many teams. How tough were those early years when you were back and forth a little bit until you got yourself established and stayed in the league for well over a decade?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, that was a tough time in that if you have family, and this happened in New York, and I'll never forget, prior to training camp, and there's Eddie Jockman, Don Simmons, and myself were the goalies in the New York Ranger chain. And this is just prior to training camp, and the cat, Emil Francis, who was the GM and coach at the time, literally told the three of us, said, listen, he says, the starting goalie for the season will be the one that has the best training camp. So, training camp happens. I feel I have a good training camp. Eddie Jockman had a good one. Don Simmons had a good one. So they chose Eddie to start, and I was sent down to Baltimore. So my wife and daughter, they came down. I thought I'd be spending the rest of the year down in Baltimore. So they came down. We got a place to stay in Baltimore. And then it happened that the Rangers were having problems winning games. So what happened is they sent Eddie Jockman down to Baltimore, and then I was sent up to New York. And this went on for close to a month. And I'll never forget the one time, if I played, say on a Sunday, I would catch a train at midnight in New York to take down to Baltimore. And there happened to be a snowstorm in Baltimore. And I literally had to walk from the train station about halfway to the place that I was living. And I swear I was going to die of freezing. And I made up my mind there. I got to tell the cat. I said, that's it. I'm not playing any longer. I'm going home. So I had that meeting with him. He says, well, why didn't you tell me that? And I said, well, I thought maybe you'd have a change of your mind that I would stay up here. He says, well, you are right now. And so that's when I had my wife and daughter moved up to New York, and we stayed there the rest of the season.
Must have been hard to do that, though. I mean, we're talking about an era where, like, as you told me before, like they didn't want you to wear masks and players to wear helmets, and you had to you had to stand up for yourself in an era where I'm not sure a lot of players would have been comfortable doing that.
No. I mean, you talk to players that played it at that time, in the 60s and maybe early 70s, in that they're always being dictated to, and we had no comeback. And then, fortunately or unfortunately, that's when Eagleson came on the scene. And he was good at the beginning, but unfortunately he got carried away with a few other things. And it didn't work as well as we thought it would work.
One thing I noticed, and I wanted to make sure I asked you about this, we hear a lot about the size of goaltenders nowadays and how it's gotten, so much bigger. And there are guys that played, before that, under 6 feet on a regular basis. And when I met you the other day, I was struck by how tall you were. You played at 6'3". Was that rare for the day? Because it feels to me like a new trend, and yet you were not a short goaltender.
It is funny that you brought that up, because I was always told, and all the goalies were shorter than 6 feet, and I was always told that I was too tall to be a goalie. Now I have to laugh in that they won't even look at anybody unless they are over 6'3". I mean, some of them are 6'4", 6'5". And that's the first thing that the scouts look at. Say, how tall is he? They won't even look at anybody that's shorter than, say, 5'11". And as it turned out, I was able to get that thinking that tall is negative versus tall is positive.
Do you think, was it just because the game was so different? Did they think somebody who was taller wouldn't? You talked about dragging your right leg to protect the bottom of the ice. Did they think tall goalies wouldn't be able to get down and protect the bottom as well, or they wanted their goalies closer to the ice?
Well, it wasn't their style to play, according to coaches and general managers. I could remember watching a televised game, and we had this while I was still playing, and Gary Smith was playing for, I believe, Toronto it was. And it was Howie Meeker.
Okay.
Okay, so now he's a broadcaster. And Gary Smith let in a goal between his legs. And he was on his knees. And Howie Meeker came on and said, he doesn't know how to play goal. You got to stand up in this game. You got to constantly stand up. Well, again, that was a crock as far as I was concerned, because there was a new style coming in, and probably Glenn Hall was one of the first ones to kind of go into a butterfly situation. And you can't criticize him in that he was a brilliant goalie, and so that's how it started. And then Esposito kind of played the same side when he broke in with Chicago. And like I say, I was always dragging my leg. Once I made the NHL, it was just a new style that I adopted and stayed with it right to the end.
So it's interesting because I do think the butterfly, and maybe it's just me being later to the position and not really coming to goaltending until the last 15 years. And in my mind, I think a lot of people credit it to sort of the Patrick Roy and the, Francois Allaire in the mid 80s in Montreal. But, clearly those steps were coming earlier and you were around to see it. Was it something that you talked about with fellow goalies? Did you discuss how different guys used to play? Did you try different things in practice? Did you talk amongst yourselves about the evolution of the style back in that day?
No, not really. And that's the sad thing about it, is even in those days, well, like they have now, I wish that there was a goalie coach, someone that
Right.
had played the game and that you would listen to. And it would be like, say, when I said Gump Horsley, when I was having a problem.
Yeah.
And he basically saw the weakness that I had with one particular style, and he corrected it within 5 minutes. And I says, unfortunately, that's when they should have started to bring in goalie coaches.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until a few days or a few years later that they ended up having 3 or 4 coaches behind the bench. And I missed that era, unfortunately, because I think it would have helped my game tremendously to have someone there if you're running into those problems.
And so you were pretty much left on your own for most of your career.
Absolutely. Well, I could remember in Minnesota, and Jack Gordon is the coach, and this is when I was having problems, and he's kind of basically frustrated the way I'm playing, and I says, Jack, I says, F off. I says, I'm doing something wrong, and I don't know what it is. So, and I'm trying to work out of it. I says, so leave me alone. I says, unless someone comes in that has had the experience that correct what I'm doing wrong, I'll take that. And then that's when we got Worsley about 2 weeks later.
Fascinating. You had a great career in Minnesota. You still are among the leaders for that franchise, even now that it's moved to Dallas, in terms of appearances, pretty much every major statistical category. And then in your last couple of years, you end up get traded to Vancouver. What were those final 2 seasons like with the Canucks team that, hadn't really established itself in the league, had only been in since 1970?
Well, we had a couple of rough years, and unfortunately,
that's tough for a goalie.
Yeah, for a goalie, yeah, exactly. But anyways, I kind of have to laugh at this, and because of the amount of time that I spent in the league, I would kind of try to get my teammates going for the game. And so we're in Toronto this one game, and I opened my mouth. I says, "Okay, guys," I says, "here's the deal." I says, "If we keep them down to under 25 shots, I will guarantee a win, and I will buy dinner for everyone." Yeah. So, anyways, after the first period, Jerry O'Flaherty came up to me. He said, and there was 20. I had 26 shots in the first period. He says, Cesar, he says, "Did you mean the period or the game?" And he brings that up all the time wherever we're at. He loves telling that story.
Money on the board, and they couldn't back it up.
Yeah, exactly.
So after that, though, it's funny because you mentioned goalie coaches, but you spent, after retiring from the game after the 2 seasons in Vancouver and obviously staying here, you served a couple seasons as the goalie coach. So you were one of the trailblazers in terms of, like we talked about with Worsley, providing some resources for the guys who came behind you.
Right. Yeah. And that's when Brian Burke and Pat Quinn came here. I knew them quite well. And I had already started a new career in sporting goods business. So they asked if I would come out and just help with the goalies that they had. And there's Brodeur was there then.
Richard, yeah.
Hanlon was there then, and Caprice.
Yeah. Frank Caprice, Glenn Hanlon, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the era I grew up watching.
Yeah, and those were the 3 goalies. So basically, I came on. I said, "Listen, guys," I says, "I'm going to observe you." I says, "One thing I will not do is I won't change your style of play because you've worked at this style for years. I said, not to change it, but there's going to be little things that I spot that I'll try to correct you on, and hopefully it'll help." And really, that's the attitude I took, and hopefully, help the 3 guys that were there at the time.
Now, what can you give me an example? I know this is hard because this is a long time ago, but what even Worsley's advice? Because I think, you know, try to get familiar with the modern game and some of the things and the adjustments that I see goalies make. What types of adjustment would we be talking about back, you know, whether it was Worsley in 1970 or your time as a goalie coach in 77, 78 era?
It would be a combination of things. Playing the angles properly,
Right.
be it like with me, bending your knees just a little more for a better balance. You know, open them up a bit rather than having your pads strictly together.
Yeah.
And just little things like that. And really, that's what I found in adjusting my own style, being self-taught rather than having anyone close by that knows the position well. And with that in mind, I think from there, and they wanted me to stay on longer. Pat Quinn did. I said, Pat, I've got a business to run. I says, what you need is a full-time goalie coach. And he says, Cesar, he says, you're right. He says, you know, you got your own business to run, and we do need a full-time coach.
You were ahead of the curve by almost 10 years before the NHL finally came around to that idea.
Absolutely. But sometimes when you mention things like that, is this guy nuts or what? What's he trying to do?
Well, between being 6'3" and the need for goalie coaching, you were ahead of the curve in a lot of different areas, Cesar. I wanted to ask you a couple last ones really quick. You mentioned, you know, being a kid and the Sears catalogs and making your own equipment. How did that evolve over the course of your career? Nowadays, you know, NHL goalies get multiple sets of equipment. It's custom made for them. What was it like back then in terms of taking care of your equipment, getting new equipment, making it last for the year? And how did that evolve over your career in terms of the quality of the equipment, the protectiveness of the equipment? We started with masks, but everything else changed too.
Well, the thing was, while I was still in trail, you had the hockey organization, the
minor hockey or
hockey, yes, the minor hockey, and they provided all the equipment for a goalie.
Okay.
So it really wasn't until I went to St. Mike's in Toronto, played junior hockey there with Father Bauer, that I was provided with my own set of pads and gear. First time I had a pair of goalie skates was when I was 15 years old, still in trail. It was my last year in trail before going to St. Mike's.
And as you got into the NHL, did you get new stuff every year, or did it have to last?
It lasted. I'd say a set of pads probably lasted me at least 2 years. Nowadays, it just seems that they're switching every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And I would have loved to have tried the equipment that they have now because it's so much lighter than what we had. I'll never forget in Chicago, the old arena there, is that the dressing room was below the ice surface. You had about maybe anywhere from 12 to 15 stairs, and I literally would be bushed, and I'd be the first one out, say, to start the second period. Tom Reed was the defenseman, and he'd always climb the stairs behind me. I says, Tom, I'm so tired, and these pads are so heavy. I says, give me a boost to get up these stairs. And literally, he had to push me up, get me on the rear end, and hoist me up to the next step. But the thing is in Chicago especially, when they flooded the ice, a lot of water was still in the crease area.
Yeah.
So if you went down, the pads would absorb all this water, and they became, I would say, at least between the two of them, 50 pounds versus what right now, the lightness of them.
4.5 pounds a pack, basically, on average in the NHL.
Oh, I would have just loved a pair like that. Just
and the way they design now, you talked about dragging the right leg. You would have been it's designed basically to support you when you drop into a butterfly. It's totally different.
Can I start my career all over again?
Well, with all the experience and knowledge, and you've got the right size for it.
Yeah, it would have been great to try it. Well, I know there's certain things. The goal pads weren't part of it, but all the upper chest equipment.
Yeah.
Going into training camp, the trainer would have a whole new set of everything. And stubborn me, no, I says, give me my old stuff back.
Oh.
Yeah. And anyways, he was disappointed. And that's how I ended up. I still had my old chest protector, my old quilted arm protector. It's my grandson. He's got a hold of all my equipment, and he's kept it all. Once in a while,
wow.
I have a look at it. I'm wondering when the mold is going to set in.
I mean, as much as I talked early on about a mask and couldn't imagine standing out there without a mask, some of the chest protectors you guys used to wear wasn't doing much to protect. You were probably feeling anything that you didn't catch cleanly in the hands.
Oh, Bobby Hull. Oh. Now you're bringing back nightmares.
I'm sorry.
When him and Makita, when they first came out with those curved sticks.
Yeah.
And where they didn't know they were going, and they were all high shots. And the thing is, with the chest protector that I had, was maybe a half inch of felt.
Ooh.
And the arm slings, they were just quilted with cotton bat inside. And I can remember when I was in Vancouver here, Harold Snaps, I literally would be black and blue all season long, and it would take maybe a month in the off season to get rid of all the swelling and the coloring.
Oh,
yeah,
so
that's telling you something and how poor the equipment was. But it stubborned me too. I could have gone along with the newer stuff that they brought on.
You just wanted to feel like you could move, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the new stuff is unbelievable, but it is a little more restrictive. I think for all the talk about mask and I think the chest protector might be the biggest change in the game, because in your generation, goalies didn't use their body to make saves on purpose because it hurt.
Yeah, well, like I say, with Bobby Hull when he came with the new curved stick, I get the puck in the gut and I would feel it.
Ooh.
Normally you'd think, oh well, okay, you're going to be protected with it, but even guys that I had on my own team, like Vic Hadfield, he had a heavy shot just like Hull, and then Dennis, the brother, came along, and a lot of these guys. All you were concerned about is maybe 2-3 guys on a team that had heavy, strong shots. I look at it now. Every player has a strong shot. And yeah. I commend the goalies. Some of them are just so brilliant in how they react to everything. And I really admire that, and I'm sure they work hard at their position.
Is there anyone? Do you still love to watch? Is there anyone that jumps out that you love to watch when you watch hockey, or you just still enjoy the game in general? Any goalies you love?
You know what? Pretty well, I would say at least 3/4 of them are basically brilliant. The others very good, and I just don't see many weaknesses in the goalies nowadays.
That's fair. That's a good comment. It's unbelievable how deep the talent pool runs in the National Hockey League and even down to the American Hockey League these days.
Yeah, as far as the American Hockey League, I think they're just so close to being at the NHL level. And really, that's how you get your break. If someone gets hurt and you're brought up, it's just like the goalie that they've got now in Vancouver.
Lankinen. Yeah, Lankinen, Kevin Lankinen.
Yeah. So, the other goalies got hurt. He comes in and he plays phenomenal. Now, he lost the other night. He let a few shots go in. But
it happens.
But the thing is, he's opened up a few eyes to where, okay, he could start most of the games right now. That's how much confidence we have in him.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, this is Mr. Maniago. This has been a real treat, a real pleasure, a real honor. I don't want to keep you any longer, but thank you so much for being so generous with your time and with your stories from a fantastic career full of many wins, many adventures, many great teammates, and sharing all those stories with us. I know our audience is really going to love this. So thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to see you again at the rink in the near future, hopefully.
Great, Kev. Good talking to you, and I hope I was giving you some insight in what goaling was all about.
I wrote it down. 7 games in 6.5 days.
With
bus trips in between.
Yeah.
Train. I think he said he took the train back from Sudbury. So they'd fly him to Sudbury, he'd play, and then he'd get on a train at midnight back to Toronto. Crazy.
His stance was awesome.
It had so
crouched right down.
Well, he had to because they didn't want him to be tall.
With that, I loved his mask too. So maybe we can find a nice photo and maybe it'll be on the feature image this week. But I loved that old school fiberglass mask. It was so unique. One of the things for me, I love the paint jobs, but there were some guys that just stood out for what that plain white or tan mask looked like. And I love that, the Dryden one was very different. Maniago's was different. Rogie Vachon, Gilles Villemot, you get so many you can go through that are absolutely didn't even need the paint job to know who you were looking at.
You're describing the great goalies poster of the 70s, 80s.
You certainly reminded me of them, but boy, they're top of mind for me because I did watch him play. Maybe I'm a tad older than you, but just the names that I grew up with.
So cool. And some of those, I always wanted the Plant mask, but some of those pretzel masks and the Maniago mask and
or the Plant was my first.
Or how about the story of him getting to Montreal and Jacques Plante being the guy there, and Jacques asked him if he wanted a mask, and he says yes. So they go to the hospital to get fit
Can
for
you imagine?
it.
Before you get cut, you go to the hospital to get fit for it.
Well, that's modern medicine. That's modern medicine, just looking at preventative measures, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
We want more of that from our physicians today.
Let's get a mold of your face so we know how to put it back together properly after it takes a few bucks.
I'm not sure we've ever been further from our presenter of the feature interview, NHL Cesare with Cesare Maniago. Two very different worlds here.
Oh, very different worlds. Imagine if Cesar could put on Cesare. And we've led the program with Cesare a few times recently, guys. And coming up behind the feature interview this week, we just wanted to mention something. As Cesar was playing without a mask, it really reminded me of the dangers of the game back then. And guess what I was doing this week in Cesare, boys? NHL Cesare. I put it on a couple nights ago and I tried the concussion baseline testing.
You did?
Yeah, I did.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was obviously I'm not at great risk of concussion because I'm not playing these days, but I did want to try it out and just sort of see what it was like. I believe it's under the subcategory of the USA Hockey approved things. We're not suggesting that this is a replacement for proper treatment and proper professional consultation, but having that baseline testing available to you, I think is really nice because so many teams nowadays have all their players go through concussion baseline testing before the season. So they'll have something to refer to should they need to, but it's just sort of there. You don't know what it is. You don't know what it means. You can't refer to it later in the season if you'd like to see where things are going. Not suggesting that NHL Sense Arena is a great way to hop in there and decide whether you need to go to the doctor or not. If you have any concerns, obviously you go to see a medical professional, but it's still really cool to go through this program and sort of see where you stand. And it's a great example of all the different neurocognitive drills which are available in NHL Sense Arena. We talk all the time about it being this great tool for simulating plays and simulating shots, and not even simulating, it feels so real for that off-ice component of feeling like you're on ice. But these neurocognitive drills, let's not forget that they're there. It delivers so many ways of dealing with that interface between your brain and your vision and your eye-hand coordination. And there's just a whole suite of drills. In the case of the concussion training, I think it was 13 different drills that I had to go through. Things like matching words and colors and grabbing pucks of different colors as they're throwing through. They really challenge your system. And then there's a big twist at the end that kind of threw me off. So maybe I'll just leave it at that and suggest that people go in there and see how it goes for them and see what that experience is like.
I'm going to follow your lead. I'm going to go do it.
And the other thing that came to mind, I don't want to turn this into 15 minutes on NHL Sense Arena because we could probably do hours, but Woody talked this week in the gear segment about how the hockey shop is always evolving. And that was the other thing that stood out for me with NHL Sense Arena as I put the headset on, and I was, in this case, standing in the Edmonton Oilers dressing room, and I thought, oh my gosh, how far this has come from when we first got those headsets, Woody. I mean, we thought it was an incredible tool back when NHL Sense Arena first started, and this is light years. This is like Cesare Maniago all the way up to, speaking of the Oilers, Stuart Skinner today, the evolution of goaltending. That's about how much NHL Sense Arena has evolved. I guess if we're just going to give them one little challenge, NHL Sense Arena, let's put in a Maniago mode so we can go out there maskless and have a little fun. Brown pads, no mask. Anyway, folks, NHL Sense Arena.
You go out with the mask and you're told to take it off. Like you have to go through that.
Toe Blake.
Toe Blake skates onto the ice and rips it off.
You planning to wear that all practice, kid?
NHL Sense Arena, it is so fun. It is so powerful. It is just an incredible tool for training off the ice as a goaltender. Head over to sensearena.com, and there's also a code for Sense Arena users, IGM50, and you'll save even more.
Great stuff. Thanks to Stuart Skinner and that little snippet from the room. Appreciate you sharing what you go through and you experience and the interactions that you have, Woody, as well as Cesare Maniago with our Sense Arena feature interview. Guys, we got to go to some NHL rinks, so we got to fly. We'll talk to everybody next week on In Goal Radio, the podcast.